My name is Abigail, but most people call me Abby. I'm 33 years old and I'm the only adopted child in the Grant family. I've spent my entire life on a treadmill running towards an acceptance that always seemed just out of reach. Last Sunday, at one of our family dinners, I made the mistake of showing my excitement for the upcoming family cruise. My sister, Chloe, just let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You actually thought you were coming?" My dad, Robert, just grinned that familiar, cruel grin. "This one's for real family, sweetheart," he added. I just managed a nod, my throat closing up, and started helping to clear the plates, swallowing the familiar lump of hurt. If you've ever known what it feels like to be on the outside looking in, especially with the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe to join me on this journey of figuring things out. Growing up as the adopted kid in the Grant household wasn't just a fact, it was the entire framework of my identity. I entered their lives at 3 years old, a small girl with wide, dark eyes and a mess of even darker, curly hair. I was the visual opposite of the blonde, blue-eyed children they already had. From the very first day, I felt like I was on probation, that my place at the dinner table, both literally and figuratively, was something I had to earn, not something I was given. My adoptive parents, Robert and Helen Grant, had 3 biological children. Chloe was 7 when I arrived, Leo was 5, and the baby, Sophie, was just a year old. The photos lining the grand staircase of their home told the story better than any words could. There were dozens of pictures from the before times, a perfect sun-kissed family of 5. After I came along, the professionally framed photos became less frequent, and when I was in them, I was almost always on the edge, as if to make cropping me out a simple task if the need ever arose. Childhood was a masterclass in subtle exclusion, a constant barrage of jokes that were just jabs wrapped in plausible deniability. Well, we have no idea where she gets that from. My father would boom with a laugh whenever I did something he deemed odd. Or the classic, blood will tell, whenever Chloe, Leo, and Sophie showed a shared talent or interest that I, of course, didn't have. These lines were always delivered with a smile, a performance meant to soften the emotional punch, to pretend they were just lighthearted observations instead of what they truly were, constant, casual rejections. My response was to become a machine of achievement. I chased perfection relentlessly. I needed perfect grades, to be captain of the debate team, to fill my weekends with volunteer work. My logic was simple and heartbreaking. If I could just be exceptional enough, they would have no choice but to finally see me as one of them, as worthy of being a full-fledged Grant. I worked twice as hard as my siblings to get half the praise they received for doing the bare minimum. When Leo scraped by with a B- in algebra, it was cause for a family celebration, complete with ice cream sundaes. When I was named valedictorian of my graduating class, my father's only comment was a thoughtful sounding, "She must have gotten some good genes from somewhere." This pattern bled right into adulthood. Family gatherings were exercises in emotional acrobatics. I'd navigate a minefield of inside jokes I wasn't privy to, listen to nostalgic stories about a time before Abby, and endure the endless subtle references to their shared DNA. But I kept showing up. I kept bringing my homemade cherry pies, I kept buying thoughtful, personalized gifts for everyone, and I kept trying to carve out a space for myself in a family that felt determined to keep me on the periphery. Then, 9 months ago, my marriage to Mark crumbled, and something shifted. For the first time, my family seemed genuinely supportive. My mother, Helen, started calling regularly, her voice filled with a new, soft concern. My father helped me move my boxes into my new, smaller apartment, a task he grumbled about but completed. Even Chloe, who had always been the most overtly hostile, took me out for coffee and a shopping trip that felt almost normal. I let a dangerous thing take root inside me: hope. I thought that maybe my divorce, my raw and public vulnerability, had finally humanized me in their eyes. that maybe, at long last, they could see me not as an add-on, but as someone who simply belonged. The Grants then started a new tradition, monthly family dinners, supposedly to strengthen our bonds. I threw myself into these gatherings with a desperate, renewed enthusiasm. I brought my famous cherry pie. I played with my nieces and nephews. I made a sincere effort to connect with my siblings about their lives and work. For the first time in my 33 years, I felt a flicker of real hope that I was finally, truly being accepted. It was at the Easter get-together a couple of months ago that I first heard whispers of a big family vacation. My parents were poring over brochures, debating Mexican Riviera destinations, comparing the amenities of different cruise lines. Chloe was insistent on a ship with top-tier childcare for her kids. Leo and his wife, Olivia, were excited about the snorkeling and scuba opportunities. Sophie, ever the foodie, was already dreaming about the 24/7 buffets. No one ever looked at me and said, "Abby, you're included," but crucially, no one ever said I wasn't. When I timidly asked about potential dates, my mother gave me a vague, "Oh, sometime in June, we think." When I mentioned how I hadn't taken a real vacation in years, my father nodded sympathetically and said something generic about how everyone needs a break now and then. I took these non-committal answers and spun them into gold. I interpreted their vagueness as a sign of their casual, familial inclusion of me. Why would they discuss all these exciting details right in front of me if I wasn't meant to be part of the plan? It seemed logical. So I started my own secret preparations. In my spare time, I researched the ports of call, reading travel blogs about the best excursions in Cabo San Lucas and the most beautiful beaches in Puerto Vallarta. I went shopping, buying new swimsuits and sundresses, treating myself to a pair of nice sandals specifically for the trip. I even went to my boss at the graphic design firm where I work and officially requested the second week of June off. I tried to join in on the planning, texting my siblings links to a swim with the Dolphins excursion in Mazatlan and a zip-lining tour through the jungle. Leo didn't respond at all. Sophie sent back a single thumbs-up emoji. Chloe replied with a dismissive, "Looks cool." Again, I chose to see their lack of engagement as a positive. We'd never been a family that communicated well after all. This was just them being them. As the supposed departure date got closer, my excitement became a palpable thing. This cruise felt like more than a vacation. It was going to be the crucible where our new, improved family dynamic would be forged. Away from the daily grind and stresses of life, we could finally bond. I painted vivid pictures in my mind, lazy afternoons by the ship's pool, laughing together over colorful drinks with little umbrellas, creating the kind of warm, shared memories I had spent a lifetime yearning for. For once, I allowed myself to believe I was finally going to be fully, indisputably included in a Grant family event. The Sunday family dinner was at my parents' house in the suburbs, as it had been every month since my divorce. Their home is a sprawling colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and flower beds my mother tends to with a near-religious fervor. The formal dining room inside had remained a museum of my childhood. The same heavy oak table and chairs, the same glass front china cabinet filled with wedding gifts that were almost never used, and the same wall of family photos documenting birthdays, graduations, and vacations, none of which featured me in a prominent way. I arrived early, holding my contribution, my signature cherry pie, the recipe perfected over years of trying to bake my way into their hearts. The house smelled of roast chicken and garlic, my mother's Sunday special. In the kitchen, Helen was bustling around, fussing over side dishes, while my father watched football in the adjoining family room. "Need any help, Mom?" I offered, placing my pie on the granite countertop. No, it's all under control," she said, her eyes barely leaving the potatoes she was mashing. "But thank you for bringing dessert, dear." By 6 o'clock, the house was full and loud. Chloe and her husband, James, arrived with their 3 kids. Leo and Olivia came with their twins, and then there was Sophie, perpetually single and proud of it. The noise level rose to a familiar, chaotic hum. The cousins chased each other through the house, my father yelled at the TV, and my siblings gathered in a corner to trade gossip. When we finally sat down to eat, the conversation inevitably turned to the cruise. It was only a week away now, and the excitement was electric. "I finally got those waterproof cases for our phones," Leo announced, passing the mashed potatoes to Olivia. "Now we can get some cool underwater pictures when we go snorkeling." Chloe's 6-year-old daughter, Emma, piped up, "Mommy, did you pack my mermaid swimsuit?" "Yes, sweetie, it's already in your suitcase," Chloe replied, meticulously cutting her daughter's chicken into tiny, perfect squares. "I printed all our boarding passes last night," my father announced, beaming with pride. "Everything is ready to go. I even booked the shuttle to the airport." I smiled, feeling a warm glow spread through my chest. This was it. After all these years of feeling like a ghost at their table, I was finally going to be part of a real family vacation. I had been so careful not to be pushy, not to ask too many direct questions, afraid I might somehow jinx my inclusion. But now, with the trip just days away and all the final preparations being discussed so openly, I felt safe enough to finally join the conversation. "I'm so excited for the cruise," I said, my smile aimed at the whole table. "I've been reading about that stop in Cabo. The beaches are supposed to be absolutely incredible." The silence that fell over the room was so sudden and absolute, it was like a physical blow. Forks stopped mid-air. My mother's face froze in a mask of pure dismay. My father and Leo exchanged a quick, panicked glance, and then Chloe let out a snort, a harsh, ugly sound that sliced through the thick silence like a shard of glass. "Oh," she said, her voice a weapon of pure mockery. "You thought you were coming?" My father's face then twisted into that familiar, cruel grin, the one that always preceded a joke at my expense. "It's for real family," he said, drawing out the word real in a way that left no room for interpretation. "Blood family, not me." The dining room seemed to swim around me. My mother was now staring intently at her plate, refusing to look at me. Leo fidgeted uncomfortably in his chair but remained silent. Only Olivia, his wife, looked genuinely horrified, her mouth slightly agape as she glanced from my father to me. Chloe's children started to giggle, not understanding the cruelty but feeding on the sudden tension. Sophie took a large, deliberate sip of her wine, her eyes suddenly fascinated by the floral pattern on the tablecloth. I felt the impact physically. My stomach plummeted and my cheeks burned hot before turning ice cold. A strange buzzing started in my ears, and I had the sensation of floating just above my body, watching myself sit there frozen. In that strange, detached state, a highlight reel of past humiliations flashed through my mind. Being left with a babysitter while the real family went to Disney World when I was 9, not being included in the official sibling photo at Chloe's wedding, my father introducing Leo and Sophie as my son and my daughter at his retirement party, while I was standing right beside them. I was right there. "Could someone pass the gravy?" I heard myself say. My voice was a stranger's, distant and unnervingly calm. The conversation slowly, awkwardly sputtered back to life around me, moving on to safer topics. I nodded and smiled in all the right places, but I wasn't there anymore. I had retreated deep inside myself to a fortified place I had constructed over decades of moments just like this one, a protected inner core where their rejections couldn't quite reach. When dinner was over, I helped clear the plates, just like I always did. In the kitchen, my mother made a feeble attempt at an apology. "Abby," she murmured, rinsing a plate under the tap. "I'm so sorry about, we just thought, with everything you've been through with the divorce, you wouldn't want to—" "It's fine," I cut her off, my voice flat. I didn't trust myself to hear whatever half-baked excuse she was about to offer. I understand, but I didn't. Not really. What I understood was that after 30 years, after all my trying and hoping, nothing had changed. I would always be the outsider, the not quite family member, the asterisk in the Grant family story. Chloe, naturally, made no such attempt at an apology. Instead, she continued to twist the knife as we loaded the dishwasher. "We would have invited you," she said, her tone completely devoid of sincerity. "But the cabins only sleep 4, and we needed the space for the kids." I knew it was a lie. I had spent hours on the cruise line's website. They offered dozens of cabin configurations. My father, either oblivious to the bomb he had just detonated or simply not caring, wandered into the kitchen to grab another beer. He clapped me on the shoulder as he passed. "Next time, kiddo," he said cheerfully, as if he were promising to take me to a movie, not acknowledging that he had just publicly and brutally disowned me from a major family milestone. I left as soon as I could, making a lame excuse about an early meeting the next day. I hugged everyone goodbye, playing my role of the good, unbothered daughter until the very end. But the moment I drove away from that house, the first tears started to fall. By the time I reached the end of their street, my vision was so blurred I could barely see the road. I had to pull over onto an empty side street, my hands shaking too violently to grip the steering wheel. There, alone in my car, with only the distant hum of the highway for company, I let out a scream that had been building inside me for 30 years. It was a raw, primal sound of rage and hurt and betrayal that left my throat burning and my entire body trembling. And then I just cried. I cried until there were no tears left, only a hollow, cavernous ache of a wound that I knew would never truly heal. I don't really remember the drive home. I somehow navigated back to my apartment, a small one-bedroom in a converted Victorian house, far across town from my parents' perfect suburban world. I collapsed right inside the door, still in my nice dinner clothes, just a heap of profound hurt on the hardwood floor. The flashbacks kept coming in relentless waves, each memory of exclusion hitting me with fresh pain. The time my parents forgot to include me in the family Christmas card photo when I was 12. The summer they sent Chloe, Leo, and Sophie to an expensive sleepaway camp, but told me there wasn't enough money for me to go too. The family reunion where a distant cousin asked if I was a neighbor's kid because I looked nothing like the rest of the Grants. I don't know how long I lay there, but eventually I pulled myself together enough to call Maya. She's been my best friend since college, the rock who got me through my divorce. They did what? Maya's outrage was immediate and deeply satisfying. "I'm coming over, right now, and I'm bringing wine." 20 minutes later, she was at my door armed with not one but 2 bottles of Merlot and a fierce, protective energy that instantly made me feel less alone. She listened patiently as I poured out the entire sordid story, her expression growing darker with every detail. "This is not okay, Abby," she said firmly when I was done. "This is emotional abuse. You know that, right?" I just shrugged, still hesitant to put such a harsh label on my family's behavior. "They've always been like this. I should be used to it by now." "No," Maya insisted, refilling my glass. "You should not have to get used to being treated like you're disposable. You are their daughter, for God's sake." We moved to the sofa in my small living room, and Maya, ever the strategist, grabbed a notepad. She made me list every single family-only event I could remember being excluded from over the years. The list grew longer than even I had realized. Vacations, birthday celebrations, even casual get-togethers that they'd forgotten to tell me about. "Look at this," Maya said, tapping the long list with her pen. "This isn't accidental, Abby. This is systematic." I had to admit she was right. And as we talked more, another pattern emerged. Chloe was always the ringleader, the one who initiated the exclusion, with my parents, especially my father, happily following her lead. Leo and Sophie were more passive, rarely starting it, but almost never standing up for me either. "And what about your part in this?" Maya asked gently. "My part?" I was taken aback. "Honey, you keep accepting it. You keep showing up with your perfect cherry pies and your hopeful heart, and you let them hurt you over and over again." Her words stung, but I knew she was right. I had spent my entire life being the family doormat, so desperate for whatever crumbs of affection they'd throw my way that I kept coming back for more punishment. As the wine worked its magic and the hour grew late, my deep sadness began to curdle into something else: anger. A white-hot, righteous anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. "Let me see those texts from them again," Maya said. I pulled out my phone and we scrolled through months of messages with new, enlightened eyes. The vague, evasive responses to my direct questions about the cruise, the group chat I'd been accidentally left in, where they discussed shore excursions without ever acknowledging my suggestions. The way the conversation would mysteriously die whenever I chimed in. "Wait," Maya said suddenly, grabbing my phone. "Your dad's email. You're still logged into it on your browser, aren't you?" It was true. Robert had used my laptop to look up some things when he was helping me move, accessed his email, and apparently never logged out. I shouldn't. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. "Just look," Maya urged. "If there's nothing there, no harm done." I clicked on his email icon, and there it was, a folder labeled Cruise 2025. Inside were all the booking confirmations, 7 flight tickets, 3 cabins on the Carnival Panorama, reservations for shore excursions, even the airport shuttle service. "Holy crap," Maya whispered. "You have access to everything." And I did. Every confirmation number, every itinerary detail, every payment receipt. My father, in his technological carelessness, had also saved all his passwords in my browser, which meant I could log into the airline's website, the cruise portal, everything. "You could cancel it all," Maya said, her voice a mix of mischief and seriousness. The thought sent a thrilling jolt of both terror and profound satisfaction through me. Could I? Should I? I could never, I said out loud, but I didn't close the browser window. "Why not?" Maya challenged. "They've been hurting you for your entire life, Abby. Maybe it's time they felt a tiny fraction of the pain they've so casually inflicted on you." I sat there in silence, the moral weight of it pressing down on me. This wasn't just standing up for myself anymore. This was active. This was revenge. "I need to think about this," I said finally. Maya nodded, understanding. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But Abby, at some point, you have to stop being the bigger person. They're counting on it. They know you'll just take it because you always have." After Maya left, I sat alone in my dark apartment, staring at my father's open email on the laptop screen. I was just about to close it to try and move on when I noticed another folder. This one was labeled Family Stuff. Curiosity, that fatal human flaw, got the better of me. I clicked. Inside was an email thread between my father, Chloe, and Leo. The subject line hit me like a physical blow: cruise logistics, Abby not included. My blood ran cold. I clicked it open. "Dad, make sure Abby doesn't find out the actual departure date," Chloe had written. "She's so needy. She might just show up at the airport and try to guilt us into taking her." My father had replied, "Don't worry. She thinks we're leaving on the 15th, not the 12th. By the time she figures it out, we'll be halfway to Mexico." And then, the words that broke me completely, from Leo, the brother I thought was just a passive bystander. "LOL, remember when she crashed Sophie's graduation party by showing up early to help? So awkward having to pretend we wanted her there." Something inside me snapped. Some final, tenuous thread of familial loyalty and hope just broke clean in two. If they could conspire so deliberately to deceive me, if they could laugh behind my back about my earnest attempts to connect, then maybe they deserved a taste of their own bitter medicine. I took a deep, steadying breath and opened a new spreadsheet. It was time to make a plan. The spreadsheet became my war room. I created tabs for flights, the cruise booking, excursions, and airport transfers. I meticulously documented every confirmation number, every customer service line, and every cancellation policy. I discovered that most of the reservations could be canceled or modified online. No human interaction needed. The cruise line itself required the lead passenger, my father, to authorize any major changes, but with his email login and the answers to all his security questions, mother's maiden name, first pet's name, high school mascot, all information I knew by heart, I could easily impersonate him. I researched the legal side of things carefully. Accessing someone's accounts without permission was a gray area, but he had used my computer, saved his passwords, and never logged out. I took screenshots to document this, just in case. Besides, I wasn't stealing anything. I was simply canceling reservations and ensuring the money was refunded to the original payment methods. The timing had to be perfect. If I canceled too early, they might have time to rebook. If I canceled too late, the refunds might not process correctly. I needed to maximize the emotional impact while minimizing my own legal risk. I decided to wait until 3 days before their actual departure date. It would be close enough that rebooking would be nearly impossible and prohibitively expensive, but not so last minute that they would lose all their money. I wanted them to be profoundly inconvenienced and humiliated, not financially ruined. The night I chose to execute my plan, I called in sick to work for the next day. This was a mission that required my full, undivided attention. I ordered my favorite takeout, brewed a pot of strong coffee, and set up my command center at my dining table. At 11 p.m., when I knew every member of the Grant family would be sound asleep, dreaming of sunshine and margaritas, I began. I started small with the airport shuttle, the dinner reservations at the specialty restaurants on the ship, the cabana rentals on the cruise line's private beach. One by one, I picked them off, watching the cancellation confirmation emails flood my father's inbox, which I promptly and permanently deleted. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding. With each click, I half expected my phone to ring, for some sixth sense to alert them to what I was doing, but the night remained silent. Maya texted once to check in. I sent back a simple thumbs-up emoji. The main cruise booking was next. This was the big one. I logged into the Carnival site, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The system prompted me multiple times. "Are you sure? Do you understand the cancellation policy? Would you like to speak to a representative?" I clicked yes and continued through every screen. When the final confirmation appeared, "Your cruise has been successfully canceled. A refund will be processed to your original form of payment," I felt a wave of emotion so complex I couldn't put a name to it. It was part guilt, part power, part vindication, part fear. I just sat with the feeling, letting it wash over me. This was the consequence of 33 years of suppressed hurt, finally finding a release. The airline tickets were the last domino to fall. A few clicks, a few confirmation screens, and it was done. By 2 a.m., every single component of the Grand Grant family vacation had been systematically and completely dismantled. All that remained were the refund notifications, which I left untouched in my father's inbox. They would find them eventually, once they realized their trip had vanished into thin air. I meticulously cleared my browser history, deleted my spreadsheet, and logged out of all of his accounts. Then I took a long, hot shower, as if I could physically wash away the weight of what I had just done. The next day, I waited. I had taken the day off work, ostensibly sick, but really I wanted a front row seat for the fallout. I deep cleaned my apartment, alphabetized my bookshelf, did anything to keep my hands busy while my mind raced with a cocktail of anticipation and doubt. Around noon, my phone dinged. It was the Grant family group chat, a digital space that had been quiet for days. Now, it suddenly lit up like a firework. "Anyone else having trouble checking in for the flights tomorrow?" Leo had written. A minute later, Chloe. "The airline website says our reservation doesn't exist." Then my father. "Just got off the phone with the airline. They said our tickets were canceled. Must be some kind of mistake." I watched the panic unfold in real time, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was really happening. They were discovering, piece by painful piece, that their perfect vacation had evaporated. I felt a surge of dark, delicious satisfaction, immediately followed by a nauseating wave of anxiety. What had I done? But it was too late to go back. The dominoes were in free fall. My mother texted next. "Robert just called Carnival. Our cruise booking is gone too, all of it. They said it was canceled 3 days ago and the refunds are being processed. How is this possible?" The group chat devolved into pure chaos. Accusations, wild theories, sheer panic. Had their identities been stolen? Was it a massive computer glitch? Should they call the police? Not once did my name come up. Why would it? Abby, the family doormat, the perpetual people pleaser, would never ever do something like this. Until my phone rang. The screen displayed my father's name. I knew this was it. The moment of truth. I let it ring 3 times, using those few seconds to compose myself, to find the calm, steady voice I would need. "Hello?" I said, injecting just the right note of casual curiosity into my tone. "Abigail." My father's voice was tight, vibrating with barely contained rage. "We have a situation here." "Oh?" "What's going on?" I asked, a perfect picture of innocence. "Someone has canceled our entire trip, all our flights and the cruise, everything. We're standing here at the airport and they're telling us we have no tickets, no reservations, nothing." I could hear the tinny sound of airport announcements and the murmur of the crowd in the background. I pictured them there, standing amidst their piles of luggage, the slow, horrified realization dawning on their faces. They weren't going anywhere. "That's terrible," I said, my voice as level as a sheet of glass. "How could that possibly happen?" "I don't know," he exploded. "The airline says the cancellations came from my account. The cruise line said the same thing. Someone got into my accounts and canceled everything." "That's so bizarre," I said. "When did this happen?" 3 days ago, apparently. We didn't know because the confirmation emails must have gone to my spam folder or something. I need you to help us. Call the credit card company. See if you can track the refunds while we try to rebook something." This was the moment I had been rehearsing. The moment I finally stood up for myself after a lifetime of begging for their approval. "I don't think I can do that," I said calmly. "What? Why the hell not? We're in a crisis here, Abigail." "Well," I said, drawing out the word just a little, "it's a family vacation, right? For real family. I wouldn't want to intrude." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost hear the gears grinding in my father's head as he processed my words, as the terrible truth dawned on him. "What did you do?" he finally whispered, his voice deadly quiet. "I simply respected your wishes," I replied, the calm in my voice feeling like a superpower. "You made it very clear I wasn't part of this family vacation, so I made sure I wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form. You canceled our trip? How could you? How dare you?" His voice rose with each word until he was shouting into the phone. In the background, I could hear my mother asking what was happening, Chloe demanding to have the phone. "The same way you dared to exclude and humiliate me for 33 years, I said, my voice still eerily calm. "The same way you dared to laugh about me behind my back. The same way you dared to meticulously plan to lie to me about your departure date. That's, he sputtered, lost for words. "That email thread was very illuminating," I continued smoothly. "The one with the subject line, 'Abby not included.' I particularly enjoyed Leo's little story about how awkward it was pretending to want me at Sophie's graduation party." More silence. Then, "You hacked my email. I'll sue you. I'll have you arrested." "I didn't hack anything," I corrected him. "You used my computer, you saved all your passwords in my browser, and you never logged out. If anyone violated someone's privacy, it was you, in my home, on my personal device." The phone was obviously snatched from his hand, because suddenly, Chloe was screaming in my ear. "You psychotic bitch, you've ruined everything. Do you have any idea how much the kids were looking forward to this? Do you know how much this cost?" "Yes, actually, I do know exactly how much it cost," I replied coolly, "and you'll be getting all of it back." The refunds should be processed to Dad's credit card in about 5 to 7 business days. This isn't about the money, she shrieked. It's about you being a vindictive, jealous, pathetic... I cut her off. No, Chloe, this is about 33 years of being treated like I'm less than. This is about me, finally standing up for myself. I hung up the phone while she was still mid-shriek. My hand was surprisingly steady. Then I turned off my phone completely, knowing it was about to explode with calls and texts. 10 minutes later, my landline rang, a number that only Maya and my office had. I answered cautiously. Abigail? It's Olivia, Leo's wife. She was the last person I expected to hear from. I got your number from Maya's Instagram profile, she explained, her voice low, as if she was hiding somewhere. Listen, I'm not calling to yell at you. I wanted to say, I get it. You do? I asked, genuinely shocked. I have watched how they treat you for years, she said. It's awful. And what they said at dinner about the cruise being for real family, I have never been so embarrassed to be associated with them in my life. Her words, so unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that, I whispered. I'm not saying what you did was right, she continued, but I understand it. And for what it's worth, Leo isn't as bad as he sounded in those emails. He just goes along with Chloe and your dad because it's easier, but he feels guilty about it. Not guilty enough to ever stand up for me, I pointed out, a bit of the old bitterness creeping in. No, she admitted quietly, and that's on him. Anyway, I should go. They're trying to figure out if they can rebook anything, but it's a mess. Just take care of yourself, okay? And maybe don't answer your door for a few days. After we hung up, I sat in the profound quiet of my apartment, feeling strangely serene. The storm had finally broken, and I was still standing. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure. I had finally stopped being the family doormat. Over the next few hours, I watched the family group chat from afar, my main phone still powered down. The messages were a storm of fury, accusations, and frantic discussions. My mother sent several private messages to my turned-off phone, oscillating between guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to your family?" and weak, tentative apologies. We should have handled things differently. By evening, it was clear they couldn't salvage their trip. The flights were all booked solid, and the cruise ship had already resold their cabins. The Grand Grant family vacation was officially, irrevocably canceled. That's when I finally turned my phone back on. I ignored the barrage of notifications and sent a single message to the family group chat. It was a screenshot of the email thread about hiding the departure date from me, with the subject line, "Abby not included," clearly visible. I added only one line of my own text beneath it. Next time you plan to exclude someone, make sure they aren't the one who set up your Wi-Fi. Then I turned my phone off again and opened a bottle of wine. For the first time in my life, I had refused to accept their scraps. The feeling was terrifying, exhilarating, and strangely, profoundly freeing. 2 days later, a terse text from my father appeared. Family meeting. Our house. Sunday at 2. Be there. I showed it to Maya, who immediately shook her head. No way, that's an ambush. I have to go, I said. If I don't, I'm just confirming their narrative that I'm some unstable, vengeful monster. And if you do go, they'll gang up on you and guilt-trip you, and maybe even threaten you with legal action, Maya countered. At least, let me come with you. No, I said firmly. This is something I have to do by myself. But I'll be prepared, and I did prepare. I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Reynolds, who'd been helping me navigate the emotional fallout of my divorce. We spent the hour strategizing how to maintain boundaries and avoid getting sucked back into old, toxic dynamics. Remember, Dr. Reynolds told me, you can't control their reaction. You can only control your response. Stay calm, speak your truth, and be ready to walk away if it becomes destructive. I also consulted a lawyer friend who assured me that while my actions were ethically complicated, a successful lawsuit was highly unlikely, given my father's carelessness with his accounts on my personal device. By Sunday, I felt as ready as I would ever be. I dressed in a simple but professional-looking blue dress that made me feel confident. I drove to my parents' house, but parked on the street instead of in their driveway, a small act of independence and a clear path for a quick escape. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. My parents, Chloe, Leo, and Sophie, were all seated in the living room, a silent, unified front. Only Olivia, sitting beside Leo, offered me a small, encouraging smile. Before anyone could launch their attack, I took the initiative. "I want to say something before we begin," I said, remaining standing while they all sat. "I know why I'm here. I know you're all furious. But before you start telling me what a terrible person I am, I'm going to tell you why I did what I did." "This should be good," Chloe muttered under her breath. But my father silenced her with a look. "For 33 years," I began, my voice steady. "I have done everything I can to earn a place in this family. I have brought food to every gathering, bought thoughtful gifts, celebrated your successes, and asked for almost nothing in return except to be included. And for 33 years, you have made it abundantly clear that I am not, and never will be, a real Grant." "That's not true," my mother interjected, tears already welling in her eyes. "We've always loved you." "Love isn't just a feeling, Mom," I replied, my voice softening slightly. "It's an action, and your actions have consistently shown me that I am less than Chloe, Leo, and Sophie, that I don't quite belong. So you ruined our family vacation because you're jealous?" Chloe snapped. "That's really mature, Abby." "No," I said, turning to face her directly. "I canceled your vacation because when I expressed my excitement about going, you chose to publicly humiliate me. You said, 'Oh, you thought you were coming,' with that nasty sneer you've perfected over the years, and Dad backed you up by clarifying it was for real family. It was just a joke," my father protested, but his voice lacked any real conviction. "No, it wasn't," Olivia said suddenly, surprising everyone. "It was cruel, and you all know it." Chloe rounded on her. "Stay out of this, Olivia. You're not even a blood relative." "Neither is Abby," Olivia shot back, her voice firm. "But she's been a part of this family a lot longer than I have, and I have watched all of you treat her like an unwanted guest for years." The room erupted. Chloe yelled at Olivia. My mother cried harder. My father tried to regain control. Sophie, silent until now, finally spoke up. "Can we all just calm down?" she pleaded. "Abby, what you did was wrong. You know that, right?" "Yes," I acknowledged, looking at her. "It was wrong. It was vindictive and petty, but it was also the first time in my entire life that I actually stood up for myself with this family. And frankly, it was the only way I could think of to make you all finally see me." "See you?" my father repeated, incredulous. "We have done nothing but try to include you since you were 3. "That's not true, Robert," my mother said quietly, and the entire room went silent. "We haven't. Not really. I haven't tried hard enough." My father stared at her dumbfounded. "Helen, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that when we adopted Abby, you never fully accepted her," my mother said. Decades of unspoken truth finally spilling out. "You went along with it because I wanted another child and I couldn't have one after Sophie, but your heart was never in it. And the kids, they just followed your lead, especially Chloe." The room was dead silent. This was not how anyone had expected this to go. "That's ridiculous," my father blustered, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. "Is it?" my mother challenged. "Do you remember how you refused to take any time off work when we first brought her home? How you would only refer to her as the girl for the first few months? How you looked for every chance to point out how different she was from our other children?" Chloe shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I didn't know that," she said quietly, glancing at me for the first time with something other than anger. "You were 7, my mother said. You just picked up on your father's attitude. That's what children do." "Don't you dare blame me for how they turned out," my father said, his voice rising. "I'm not blaming you for how they turned out," my mother clarified. "I'm blaming you and myself for how we treated Abby, and I'm saying it's long past time we acknowledged it." The conversation shifted then. It moved away from my crime of canceling the cruise and toward the deeper foundational cracks in our family. Leo admitted he'd always felt uneasy with how I was treated, but had been too much of a coward to ever say anything. Sophie confessed that she often made herself deliberately oblivious because it was just easier than confronting the unfairness. Only Chloe remained largely unrepentant. "I still think what you did was unforgivable," she told me later, "and I'm not going to pretend otherwise just because everyone is having some kumbaya moment." "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," I replied honestly. "I'm asking for acknowledgement and for things to change." The conversation went on for hours. It was heated, tearful, and occasionally even productive. As the afternoon light began to fade, I found myself emotionally drained but strangely empowered. For the first time, I wasn't trying to shrink myself to fit their mold. I was insisting on my right to exist fully within this family or to walk away if that wasn't possible. Finally, I stood up. "I think I've said everything I came to say," I announced, "and I've heard everything I needed to hear. Where we go from here is up to all of us. But I need to be very clear about something. I am done accepting scraps. Either I am a part of this family fully, completely, without qualifications or jokes or secret exclusions, or I am not. And if I'm not, that's okay. Because I've realized I can make my own family with people who actually value me." I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 items. A small silver locket my mother had given me for my 16th birthday, and the old Grant family cookbook, passed down through generations but never officially given to me. I placed them gently on the coffee table. "These have always meant a lot to me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But I can't keep holding on to symbols of belonging to a family that might not actually want me. So I'm leaving them here until we figure out what we are to each other." "Abby," my mother began, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. "I need time," I said, "and I think you all do, too. If you decide you want me in your lives, really want me, not just tolerate me, you know where to find me." And with that, I walked out the front door, ignoring the calls for me to come back. As I drove away, I felt a strange and unfamiliar lightness. I had spoken my truth. I had stood my ground. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. The first week after the confrontation was a wall of silence. No calls, no texts. I alternated between relief and the gnawing fear that I had severed the ties for good. Maya checked on me daily, and Dr. Reynolds helped me process the tidal wave of emotions. "You've opened Pandora's box," she said. "Family systems hate change, and you've forced a massive disruption. Give them time." I threw myself into self-care. I took long walks, cooked healthy meals, and reconnected with friends. I started consciously building my chosen family, as Maya called it, a network of people who valued me for me. 10 days later, I got a text from Leo. "Can we talk? Just us." We met at a neutral coffee shop. He looked exhausted. "I owe you an apology," he began immediately. "Not just for the cruise thing. For years of standing by and letting you be treated like you were less than. I knew it was wrong, and I did nothing." "Why?" I asked, the one-word question that held a lifetime of pain. He sighed. "The path of least resistance, I guess. It was always easier to go along with Dad and Chloe, and then it just became a habit. But that's an explanation, not an excuse. I was a coward, and you deserved a better brother." It was the first real apology I had ever received from one of them. It felt like a crack of light in a dark room. "Thank you for saying that," I said, "and I meant it." "Olivia has been reading me the Riot Act," he admitted with a small smile. "She says she's been biting her tongue for years, and she's done." This made me laugh. I always liked Olivia. "She likes you too," he said. "And so do I. You're my sister, Abby. Not my adopted sister, not my sort of sister. My sister. And I'm so sorry I ever made you feel otherwise." Over the next few months, I cautiously began to rebuild. My mother and I started having one-on-one coffee dates, slowly working through decades of misunderstanding. "I failed you," she admitted during one, her eyes full of tears. "I should have protected you more. I let my fear of rocking the boat get in the way of my duty as your mother." My father was slower to come around, but he eventually reached out in his own awkward way, asking for help setting up a new smartphone. As I was leaving his house, he blurted out, "Your mother. She says I never fully accepted you. She's right, and I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start." My relationship with Chloe remained strained, a cold and distant civility. I accepted that some rifts might never heal, but the most profound change happened within me. I no longer measured my self-worth by their acceptance. I had built a life filled with friends who valued me, colleagues who respected me, and even a new, promising relationship with a kind man named Eric, who had his own complicated family history. 1 year after the cruise that never happened, my father called. They were planning another family vacation. "We'd like you to come," he said, his voice formal but sincere. "If you want to, that is." "Thank you," I said. "Let me check my calendar and think about it." The old Abby would have burst into tears of gratitude. The new Abby needed time to consider what she wanted, what was healthy for her. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I realized how far I had come. The wound of exclusion would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had found my voice, my strength, and my own true family, some related by adoption, some by choice, all by love. If you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family, please know you are not alone. Sometimes the hardest boundaries we have to set are with the very people who are supposed to love us the most. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? I'd be honored to read your story in the comments below. And if this journey of finding self-worth resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories of healing and growth. Thank you for being part of my chosen family, and always remember, you deserve to be fully seen, accepted, and celebrated exactly as you are. End of story.